Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you being here this evening. I am going to go briefly over a few slides before we get started. So like I said, we have interpreters on this call, but we're having a bit of a technical challenge. So I'm going to ask each interpreter to introduce themselves and ask if there is anyone that does want interpretation at this time. Can we start with Spanish? Either of our Spanish interpreters able to speak? No. Okay. So real technical problems. Can we have our Arabic interpreter?
أهلا ومرحبا. المترجم معكم باللغة العربية. إذا كان في الحضور أحد يتكلم اللغة العربية ويحتاج ترجمة، نحن هنا للمساعدة.
Thank you. And Portuguese? Look on the Portuguese. All right. My apologies, everyone. Not sure what the problem is. So we'll move. Yeah,
So with Rosa, she's in the Portuguese channel. So let me just tell her to come out.
Okay.
Rosa, I'm sorry. If you go back to the channel, the original channel, and with the original audio, so you can just introduce yourself. So you go back from Portuguese and just go to original audio where it says interpretation. So the same way that you got into the room.
Okay. Well, that's okay. I think if she's in there and someone goes into that room, then they're able to access the channel, the interpretation. So that's fine. So again, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Sorry for this delay. I'm Amy Lene. I'm the project manager from Boston Parks. So I have just a few items we're going to go over. Please know that this meeting is being recorded. That way it can be posted to the project webpage. We should have that video posted in about a week, and we'll add the link to the chat for the project webpage in case you'd like to view this presentation again or share with neighbors and friends who are unable to attend. And then during the presentation, we ask you to keep your video off and microphone muted. During the discussion session, we encourage you to turn your video on if you feel comfortable doing so. We hope everyone will feel comfortable sharing questions and comments, either verbally or in the chat. Please be respectful of others and mindful of everyone's time. You're also welcome to reach out to me directly via email if you would like to provide comments that way or discuss the project in more detail. We'll put my email in the chat as well. If a question or comment comes to mind during the presentation, feel free to add it to the chat. If you'd like to speak after the presentation and you're joining via Zoom on a computer, just use the raise hand button and we'll unmute you. And if anyone is calling in on a phone, use *9 to raise your hand. And once we call on you, use *6 to unmute and to mute again. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome any elected officials and staff who may be on the call and ask that you raise your hand if you'd like to say something at this time. Looks like Ellie, are you able to unmute yourself?
Hi everyone, Ellie Sanchez from Councilor Coletta Zapata's office here. Just excited for this conversation. I know it's been a little bit of a long time coming, so looking forward to hearing more, and feel free to send any comments and questions you have after this if you have anything to our office. Thank you, Amy.
Thanks, Ellie. So it has been, I think, several months since we last met. So I just want to share again what we're trying to achieve with this project. So one of the big things is to address flooding. So we're doing that by elevating sections of the pathway and adding rain gardens to create space for water, decreasing impervious area, updating mechanicals such as the pump station and backflow preventer, stabilizing slopes, and continuing to work with the butters to contain or redirect runoff, create a space that functions for all. So doing this by including clear pavement markings and signage to deter high-speed travel. We're including a variety of furnishing types and upgrading lighting along the pathways and at the underpasses, and installing new trees. And last, we are providing opportunities for community activities and programming by creating new plazas, adding infrastructure such as water and convenience power, and creating space for tool storage. And I also wanted to provide an update on the schedule since this has shifted a little bit. So we're in the process of finalizing the construction documents and the permitting process. So based on recommendations from our engineers, we determined that an investigation of subsurface conditions in the areas of the rain gardens would be beneficial. That will provide more information to the bidding contractors. So this means that we are applying for an amendment to our permit with the Conservation Commission, and we are on the October 22nd agenda. So once we have that approval, we will go out to bid. And then for anyone not familiar with the public procurement process, in that bidding, we are required to then award the contract to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder if that bid is within our budget. So our goal is to really go out to bid with a project that we know we can cover with the funding that we have. We anticipate starting work in mid-December. And so while we are a little behind what we had originally intended with the schedule, we are still aiming to complete the project by the end of December 2026. So funding for this project includes a combination of capital funds and then a land and water conservation fund grant from the National Park Service for $1 million. And then the existing conditions, which I think many of you are quite familiar with. We shared some of these slides in previous presentations, so I'll go through them fairly quickly. As I think most of you know, the Greenway experiences chronic flooding due to the fact that it's a low area in a low-lying part of the city with a relatively high water table and drainage issues. So much of the paving is also in poor condition, and as are furnishings and vegetation. So improvements will include elevating the path to get it out of the flood zone and to create space for water while it infiltrates. It'll include new paving and pavement markings to clarify areas for cyclists and pedestrians. New site furnishings, including benches and trash receptacles. New lighting, as I mentioned, including light poles and as well as flood lighting at the murals. And then new trees and rain gardens. So the furnishings include outdoor tables at the Blue Caboose, the new trash receptacles throughout, bike racks at the entrances, and benches and granite block seating. We also have a bike fix-it station near the Blue Caboose. So we have had an arborist assess all of the trees on the site, and so those that are dead or in extremely poor condition will be removed, and we will plant approximately 45 new trees. So some of the stormwater management strategies include bioswales or rain gardens, and stone trenches that are shown here along the side of the path. And then zooming in on the Blue Caboose area, we have the paved plaza with tables, new pathway paving and markings. The existing entry fence and memorial garden will both be preserved. And then in the section view, you can see how the path is elevated slightly, bringing it above the flood elevation. And from Sumner Street to Maverick Street, we have separate paths for cyclists and pedestrians. And then in section, you can see that and how the pedestrian path is at a little higher elevation. So in a bad flooding condition, that would be the route to take to stay out of the water. And then from Maverick to Gove Street, where the corridor is narrowest, we have a single 14-foot path. At Gove Street, then we have another plaza area with seating. And from Gove to Porter Street, paths are separated again, which creates another area for rain gardens. And so at those rain gardens, we are looking at incorporating short stretches of boardwalk. So this will allow, again, more space for water. We do have a design to include some rat proofing underneath these boardwalks. Sometimes those areas can be popular for rat habitat. So we've received recommendations and guidance on that, incorporating metal mesh layer just to prevent the opportunity for rat habitat. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Maria Castillo from the Transportation Department to talk about an alternative route during construction.
Thanks, Amy. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Great. So hey everyone, my name is Maria Castillo. I am a transportation planner in the Streets Cabinet, and I have been working with my colleagues in the Policy and Planning and Public Works Department to come up with an alternative route during the Greenway closure. So obviously we know that the Greenway is a very important recreational and transportation resource for people in East Boston, and we know that there is a lot of people who use it weekly and daily. And so we have been exploring some ways to create a safe and comfortable route on one of the local streets for both families and individuals who rely on this path. Next, please. So the route that we are proposing as an alternative is on Orleans Street, turning Orleans Street into what we call a slow street, and this would be all the way from Marginal Road to Porter Street. We see that Orleans is just less than a block away from the Greenway, and is very close to the Greenway access points too. So hopefully this will allow people to not go too far from their normal commutes. Next, please. And the way we're proposing to do this is by using mostly two strategies. One is signage and the other one is traffic calming. So for signage, we want to install things like pavement markings that indicate that there is going to be cyclists on the road. So this is a shared road, a shared space that people on cars, on bikes, on scooters, and other modes of transportation are going to be sharing the road with others. We're also thinking about wayfinding. So with wayfinding, we can get a little creative and use some more colorful signage to highlight community assets and neighborhood destinations that we can help people guide themselves to. We'll have some warning signs that will indicate when people are entering the Orleans Street, which is going to be, again, like a shared space for everyone, and also gateway signage, again, that indicates you have arrived to the alternative route for the Greenway. So what's on the slide is just some examples of tools that we can use. We're building a toolkit right now that includes some of these ideas. And the other type of signage is directional. So signage can indicate this is a street where people on bikes will be going in both directions, right? People on bikes, people on scooters, and again, like there may be kids playing, and there may be more families and people with kids on the stroller, etc. And for traffic calming, we're focusing mostly on three things: daylighting and clear corners. First of all, like so this is to make sure there is more visibility again for people on all modes of transportation. So this will allow people on cars to see pedestrians and vice versa to see for pedestrians to see people driving, cars coming through, and also for cyclists. This is something that is already in existence. Like people shouldn't be parking 20 feet from crosswalks. So we're just gonna enforce this and make sure that people are really not blocking these intersections. And this is another opportunity again for street art, for some creative outlets to add planters and trees and more green space to the area as well. We'll also be installing some speed humps to make sure that to reduce the speeds. So the speed would be maximum 20 miles per hour in this area. And related to these two strategies, the slow turn wedges are how, again, like people have to really slow down to take a turn, and they will have to look at all in all directions before turning into other streets. Next, please. So this is a sample block. This includes a little bit of everything that I was saying. So we will emphasize the entry point. So when people are driving, for instance, on Sumner Street and they're coming into Orleans Street, it will be very clear for people like, hey, you're entering a space that is shared by people on many modes of transportation. So beware, like yield to pedestrians. Make sure to look at all in all directions before turning onto Orleans Street. We will add pavement markings to indicate that cyclists are going in both directions, and we'll make sure that parking is the parking spots are well striped, and speed humps saying that, well, reducing the speeds to a maximum of 20 miles per hour. And again, when we reach another large intersection, like with Maverick Street, like people coming from Maverick Street onto Orleans Street will have a very clear understanding that they're entering a shared road. And signage again will include not only directional for bikes and for vehicles, but stop signage is also included in the plan. Next slide, please. And so, as Amy was saying, the Greenway closure will begin in December, and we will start getting things on the ground as early as April once the winter moratorium is over. There is a chance we can do some street signage before that, but speed humps, for instance, will be after the winter moratorium. And we're thinking too that if the community likes some of these strategies that we will be implementing, these things can become permanent even after the Greenway reopens. Next. Thank you. That's back to you, Amy.
Thank you, Maria. I put this slide in just as a reminder that we'll have updates during the construction posted here. I think the other thing I wanted to mention is that signage is, I think, very important, as we all know. So I'm in the process of developing some signage that we can put out both well in advance of the closure, so soon, the next few weeks, and then signage that will direct people to the alternate route during the construction process. So with that, I see we do have some comments in the chat. I also want to open it up to anyone that wants to raise their hand. Alex?
I think the streets cabinet knows that sharrows are not safe and don't work, so why is that what you are proposing?
Hi, Alex. So we have been looking at different alternatives. There are obviously some financial restrictions as well. We want to make sure we have something as soon as we can in the spring. And we also want to make sure that, like, we would like some of the things that we installed to become permanent, ideally. We had some other ideas of doing things that maybe the community would want to get rid of after the Greenway reopens, but yeah, I mean, we're definitely open to hearing more thoughts and to having one-on-one conversations. Yeah, so it's a mix of things. We would have liked to do a few more things, but again, like there are some kind of financial restrictions as well, and we want to make sure we get some things done as soon as possible. I'm also gonna drop my email in the chat because I realized I didn't put it in the slides.
Too. Let's see. Alex, did you have another comment?
I re-raised, yeah, sorry. So coming from the perspective, I use the Greenway every day to commute. I live near Constitution Beach and work in Pierce Park and go the full length and run Pierce Park Sailing Center at the far end of the Greenway. In the summer months in July and August, we have over 250 kids per day that come to Pierce Park to participate in our programs. Most of them live in East Boston, and many of them come by the Greenway by riding their bikes, scooters, or walking. And sending them out into Orleans Street with nothing but paint markings is definitely not okay to me. Saying that it's a financial issue also doesn't make sense to me. It's paint on one side or the other side. It would cost the same, but we need protected infrastructure, concrete that will protect people from vehicle traffic on that street.
Thanks, Alex. Let's see, Allison.
Hi, everyone. Two things. One, so I live on Orleans Street and I have two concerns. One, I agree with Alex. This doesn't seem like a particularly safe option. I use the Greenway every day and I think I often see kids riding unsupervised, which is great. It's a great part of the Greenway. But I have serious concerns that, having two-way car traffic plus two-way bike traffic on our street, I don't think is a safe option. In addition, I'm concerned, there is a large hotel opening on the corner of Orleans and Porter Street around the same time that this will be going into effect. So I'm, also concerned that there might be increased traffic to Orleans Street at the same time. And in addition, I worry that this might inhibit parking for residents in the area, insofar as, the speed bumps or, additional restrictions around the crosswalks might be a problem. So I'm, a little bit frustrated to hear this. And I think, I don't know what the answer is, but I do wonder if perhaps segmented short-term closures to the Greenway during construction might be a way to sort of reduce the impact. My second, sort of bucket of concerns relates to the Gove Street crossover. I know as someone who lives in Orleans Street, I often use the Gove Street pass to get to Bremen Street. And I know that many of the folks in my neighborhood who have kids that go to the elementary school also use that pass. So I'm wondering if there's a way to at least keep that part of the Greenway open or only closed during like a necessary period, so that people can use that to cut through, because otherwise you're walking up to Porter Street or down to Maverick Street, which could be a significant detour. Thank you.
Thanks, Allison. And that question has come up. Some of the challenges with trying to, phase the project, so north of Gove, south of Gove, means it's taking that much longer. So there's, schedule impacts, there's cost impacts. We also have limited ability to access the site from the northern end without having a negative impact on Memorial Park. So there's some challenges there. I've certainly fielded this question earlier and, said that we will look at it with the contractor once they're on board and see if there is a way to manage that, or if at the very least, maybe Gove Street can open sooner than the other areas, but it's not something I can necessarily, commit to, but we'll investigate it. It's just challenging from a logistical perspective, and I don't think we want this to go on, any longer than than it has to, because I understand it is a hardship for people to lose this access. And that was part of why we did start the construction later, so that at least it would just be one summer season. But I understand, I certainly take those comments seriously, and we'll look into, doing the best we can to mitigate it.
Thank you.
Sabrina?
Hi, I'm a resident on Bremen Street, right near the Gove entrance, and also a parent of a young child that often uses the Greenway with bike or, other methods. And I'm just wondering if it's possible to elaborate a little bit on the financial implications of not separating out a bike lane on Orleans. Has it been considered to place perhaps the bike lanes on the other side of parking? I just felt that comment was a little bit offhand, considering it's the safety of us and our children. So I don't know who would be most appropriate to elaborate on the potential financial implications of separating out a bike lane separate from the traffic, is what I'm asking.
Yes, thank you for that, Sabrina. I think we have been speaking with electeds and some members, some residents, and I think something that we have felt, that we have heard a lot of concerns about, is on the loss of parking too. And so we're looking at an alternative that would include removing parking on one side of the street. And because that was something that, again, we weren't sure that people would want to keep after the Greenway reopens, we thought that it was, there could be a lot of implications in removing parking on one side, adding a bike lane, and then having to take that back and add parking again. I really am hearing everyone's concerns, and we definitely want to find ways to provide safer routes and safer spaces, and I think there is still room to find more ways to do that. And so we're definitely open to hearing your concerns, both obviously tonight and in my email that I drop here. And yeah, we would love to hear more about these concerns, because again, I think what we have been hearing about the most, the loudest voices, have been about the loss of parking, and that is very unfortunate, and that also limits us a lot.
Yeah, it would be great to see, a little more detail. And I'm happy to send an email to, kind of further connect on that. But I just think there are other neighborhoods that have done this in a, perhaps a safer way. So I'll send an email and maybe we can connect and I can get more information. Thank you for that.
That'd be great. Yeah, thank you. David?
Hi, thanks, Maria.
Yeah.
First of all, really looking forward to all the improvements. You guys are doing an excellent job in a nearly impossible situation. So thank you for that. What I did want to ask about was and this was, I think, mentioned in some of the chat, was just in the Gove Street crossing, which I admit selfishly is one that we use frequently. Was there, or could there be, some consideration for construction to happen perhaps on either side, with potentially kind of the allowance of ingress and egress, or at least passing over the Greenway through the Gove Street crossing?
it's a challenge, and that's where I think, you know, the access that we're trying to get for construction vehicles
Sure.
at Marginal and Gove Street are really the 2 points where we can access the site. And of course, we don't want to intermingle construction vehicles and pedestrians. So I think that's something that, you know, we can certainly talk with the contractor about. It's a challenging site to work in because it is so linear, and so there's limited amount of staging area. And the way, you know, we gain some efficiency is if they can do, you know, similar work at one time along the whole stretch of the site
Sure.
and then move to the next phase, you know, as you may know. And so that's where it gets tricky to sort of have that opening in between. But, you know, I think we'll certainly, I definitely have heard that a lot. So I know it's important, and we'll try to figure out if there's at least something that can help mitigate that loss.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm in the construction business, and I completely understand challenging sites, including this one. Like I said, I appreciate that this is an impossible situation that you guys are in. But maybe it's, you know, for not the duration of the 12 months, but there are certain periods of time where, you know, more loading or more staging is necessary, where it has to be closed off 24/7. But maybe, you know, opening it up outside of work hours or something along those lines, fencing it off and opening up a couple lanes just to relieve kind of that ingress, egress, or crossover might be in the cards for, you know, 9 out of the 12 months or something.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Yeah, so I think that's something, you know, we can look at, and hopefully we can have that sort of mapped out too, so that it's not a surprise. You know, we can let everybody know with signage and with emails. That would certainly be the goal.
Gotcha. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Let's see. Alex, did you have your hand raised?
Yeah, sorry. Looking for more clarification because I've heard, you know, that not putting protected infrastructure is because of finances, and then also because the loudest voices have been people who want parking for their private vehicles. Everyone in this meeting has seemingly wanted protected infrastructure. So I'm curious, I've, you know, attended the last meeting and attended this meeting and not heard those loud voices, like what you're referring to, and if that's the issue or if the issue is the cost. I know, like, maybe you're willing to say, I'm not sure. This design as it is here goes against the Streets Cabinet's own guidelines for best practices for mobility and safety. It's a long closure, a year-long closure. And this is like, you know, the way that people are able to safely get through East Boston, not in a car. So during that closure, it makes sense that there would be an alternative for them to get where they need to go, not in a car. So what is it really that's the issue that we have to overcome here?
Yeah, thanks for that, Alex. I do think it's still a little bit of both, and I would say we wish we had done this by now, right? Like we wish we had an alternative already for you guys and we didn't have to wait until later in the spring. But again, it's something that kind of has been a little bit out of our purview, and we did some work with a consultant firm. We didn't finalize cost for the alternatives that we had, but we did have a few alternatives with a few different strategies and impacts. And, you know, like this one ranges, this one has the least amount, the smallest impact on parking. It may only impact 5 to 10 parking spots, whereas the other one would have impacted 50, and then the other one more than that, right? So yeah, there were some conversations, and I think and I hope that we can bring back this feedback that we're hearing here today, and that we can include more aggressive practices. And yes, we would. I think this is what we're having this conversation right now, and you know, like we're more than happy to report back that people want more aggressive action and more safety strategies and practices, and I hope we can deliver on that.
Yeah, 50, I mean, you know, parking for 50 cars that are sitting there versus like hundreds of people that use the Greenway every day to get where they're going is an obvious equation, and I'm still having trouble understanding how we got to this proposal that we have here.
David, do you have your hand raised? Or is that just raised from before? Let's see. Okay, Allison, do you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, just one additional point. I need to check my facts on this, but I think there are also a couple of like major construction events planned for Orleans Street. I think actually in between Gove and Maverick, there are some large residential projects that are incoming. And I think there are some existing ones that often spill into the sidewalks on Orleans Street. So presuming, I mean, setting aside the bike issue, which I think we all agree is quite challenging. I think even for pedestrians, the sidewalks on Orleans streets are often challenging to travel upon. So what is the city's plan just to make sure that those are accessible to everyone during the closure?
That was Allison, right? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Thank you. So we do have a couple, as you said, there's some developments in the area, and there are some active jobs on bringing some of these intersections into ADA compliance. I could not tell you from the top of my head, but I know we have some active projects, and we have certainly started thinking about what kind of mitigation we will be asking to all these developments in the area. So I think to answer your question, I think we may be able to push harder to bring other streets around Orleans into compliance while the Greenway is closed. I think this is going to serve as an opportunity for us to be like, okay, there is a lot of work that we need to do, not only on Orleans, but on these other feeder streets and neighborhood streets. So this may be an opportunity for us to push for that. And yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
Thanks for all of these great comments and conversation. This is really helpful. I mean, this is why we're here, to hear that. And I'm looking, trying to kind of scan the chat, make sure we're capturing any questions, but I'll certainly have that also downloaded so I can follow up with anyone. The question of Bremen Street, was it considered as a route, has much less traffic compared to Orleans? Maria, I think that was looked at. I think there was certainly a rationale for Orleans. I think the counts that were done actually did find lower volumes on Orleans, but is that correct, Maria?
That's correct, Amy. I think we did look at Bremen, and I believe maybe at Cottage and other options too, but Orleans seem to be the quieter, the already slower of those. Yeah, other alternatives would have included things like circuit breakers, so turning these streets even into more neighborhood, like more local access only, rather than having people go through this street to access some of the major destinations, that it would only become accessible for people who live on these streets. And that is probably something that we can still consider doing. So again, this feedback is all very helpful.
I see some comments about Gove Street again and how critical that is. Let's see. Yeah, and thanks. There was a question about when the Greenway will reopen. I'm really aiming to have it done by December of 26. That's the goal. You know, oftentimes construction projects take longer than we anticipate, but at least, you know, I think that's the middle of winter, but we can expect that, you know, by that spring it'll absolutely be open. But we're really aiming for December of 2026. David, do you have your hand up? Do you want to unmute yourself?
Yes, sorry, just this reminded me of this, just discussing the safety of Orleans Street. Well, as someone who walks up both of those, I certainly appreciate that Orleans is far less trafficked. But with that, Bremen Street is far more trafficked than it should be already because trucks use it, even though it is not a truck route. I don't know if Orleans is it technically a truck route or not, but I imagine this is going to put more vehicular traffic onto Bremen Street for people that would otherwise be using Orleans Street, perhaps. Some of the safety precautions that you've put on Orleans Street, I was curious if any thought had been put into because of the increased traffic, including increased truck traffic on Bremen Street. Perhaps some speed bumps or something along those lines might make sense on Bremen as well to sort of make that, safer. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you for that. I don't know personally if we have looked into that. I think we would have to, yeah, depending on the truck volume, we'd have to see if speed humps is feasible. And it may not be as, like the speed humps wouldn't be as close to each other as they would be on Orleans, obviously, but I will make sure we look into that. Thank you.
Yeah, just as while you're doing the work already, I figured I'd throw that out there because it's as anyone in the area that knows these streets, I think Chelsea Street is the truck route, and so many trucks go down Bremen, even though it's far narrower than a truck, can traverse down. And they also certainly use Orleans Street to get to and from Jeffrey's Point. And perhaps with these narrower lanes and slow turns, they'll be forced onto Bremen. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Okay. I think we have some great comments here. I think they'll we'll certainly take these back. Let's see. I see a question specifically about the Greenway project. So the Massport sections of the Greenway and Memorial Park will be open. So the city-owned portion of the Greenway is just up to Porter Street. So it's about a half mile. All right. Does anyone else want to share any thoughts or have any questions? Yeah, Tracy, are you able to unmute? Okay.
Yes. Hi. Thanks for putting this together. I had put it in the chat. I'm not sure if you saw it. I was wondering if if anyone's looked into possibly making this section of Orleans Street one way with contraflow bike ped pathways as a possible option. Because I also just don't trust drivers to follow paint markings in general.
Yeah, again, so that was like the most aggressive option that we looked at also that would have required more parking lots, but also again opportunities if we were to install a bike lane on one side of the road, like there would also be opportunities for more street art and street furniture and places to rest and other things, right? So obviously other benefits of calming the street that we thought were either too aggressive or too much parking lots or too expensive. So I appreciate you for bringing this up again to me, and I'll definitely make a note that that's something that is in people's minds and that they would have liked to see.
Thanks, Tracy, for that question. Thanks, Maria, for the answer. We did put our emails again in the chat. So happy to take, any additional thoughts too that come to mind later, if you want to reach out. We know Alex feels strongly about it, so thank you for sharing that, Alex. I think it's helpful to hear, so we will, again, like we've said, we'll take these comments back. And we appreciate you all being here and sharing your thoughts. I think if that's the last of the comments, we got a question, what will be shared back? So from Chrissy, so I will post this recording to the project webpage. Oh, what will be shared back specific to the construction start. I will be putting out signage to let people know, and I will let you all know when we get closer to that that precise construction start date. We do think that's mid-December, and we believe we can do some, some demo work in the colder months. But once you're on these calls, you registered, I will have your email address, so I will be able to reach out. And we certainly will, have conversations with the friends to keep them in the loop and to share out with their network. So I hope if you know of folks who may want or need an update on the project, please feel free to share the project webpage. Actually, that's one thing I will put in the chat now. And so we'll post the construction updates there, and as well as email those out. And I see another comment about a bridge possible for Gove Street. I love that idea. I think it may be cost prohibitive, unfortunately, in this case, but it's an interesting idea. I know that is a challenging loss, that connection. So I understand and do hear those comments and appreciate them. Great, thank you, Ellie. Also in the chat, we have Ellie from Counselor Coletta Zapata's office and her email, so feel free to connect with them as well. Any last thoughts, or anyone who else wants to make a comment before we depart? All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Thanks Maria for being here from transportation. Thanks again thanks to the friends for the partnership there, and for all of the community members advocating for biking and walking. We appreciate you, and I think we'll be in touch soon.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks, Amy. Thanks, everyone.